Okay, so to explain the concept of arrays, I can I can say the following. When we're trying to solve problems using a computer, we usually need to represent our problem or the situation or the elements in our problem in terms of the data structures that we have available. One of these structures or data structures that we have available is the variable. So if I want to, for example, represent the age of a person, I can create a variable called age, and I'm going to store the value of the age in that variable, right? But if I want to represent the ages of all the students in one grade, now I would have to do something like, for example, age of student 1 is going to be 10, age of student 2 is going to be 11, age of student 3 is going to be 9, and so on and so forth. So in this case, just using variables is not enough. It's very inconvenient. So that's why we'll have to create arrays, right? Arrays are just a way to group all these variables in just one variable. So I can say, for example, that I have the age array. In Python, for example, you would say age is just an empty array. And then you would have to start adding elements to that structure of an array. Well, actually in Python, arrays are not arrays per se, they're called lists. And we're going to see what that means and why they are different. But the concept of arrays is, let's say that I first defined that there are 11 students in this group. So I can say that, well, let's just call them, a very small group, 5 people. So I have, these are the ages of, well, that wouldn't make much sense. This would be the 5 ages of 5 students in one group, right? So now I can access 5 different variables with just one variable called age, which is a group of 5 variables, right? And this group is of type integer in this case. So we have 5 different integer numbers that are stored in one variable, and we can access and manipulate those variables just with one called age. So if I want to access, for example, the first age, I'm going to say age 0, because this has to be ordered so we can access those numbers by accessing this index here. So if I want to access this 11, I have to call age 0. If I want to access this 10, I have to call age 1. If I want to access this, age 2, and so on and so forth, and the last one is going to be age 4. So as you can see, arrays are just a way to access multiple variables of the same type in just one variable. And to access those, we have to define the indexes of these elements. So usually in most programming languages, what you do is to have the first element is of index 0. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I have 5 elements, I'm going to move from 0 to 4. Right? If I have 10 elements, then I'm going to be moving from 0 to 9, right? Okay, so I hope that's clear. And now I'm going to create a video using Python to show you how you implement this concept of arrays in Python and how you can also manipulate the data inside the array. And with a concept, in Python, the concept is no longer array, it's called a list. Why a list is different than an array? Because in an array, first, the size of the arrays is fixed. In other programming languages like C, C++, Java, this structure arrays has a defined size, so you can no longer change the size once you create the variable, and also they have to be of the same type. So in C++ and Java, you cannot have in the same array, for example, one number, one string, and one boolean. But if you use lists as they are created in Python, it's very convenient because you can, for example, let's create an array, a list called A, then using append, you can insert into this array whatever you want. So let's say that I say append 2. That means that A is going to be now an array with an element of which has a 2 inside of it. If I append of 4, then I'm going to have now my array of 2, 4. Let me just create some space here. Okay, wait. So I was saying I'm just going to erase here to create some space to explain how you can, using Python, you can add elements. I'm going to add some screen recording of Python programming later on so you can understand. So in Python, just by doing something like this, you can create an array. Now to insert elements to this array or this list, actually this is not properly an array because as I said, arrays are usually have a defined size and they are of the same type. So in Python, you don't use arrays per se, you use lists. Now lists are different because you can insert multiple types in the same array and the size of the array is variable, so you can change the size. So if I add one number here and then one string here and then one, another number, if I print this array, I'm going to see something like this. Okay, so that means that in lists in Python, you can have multiple types in the same array. So A is going to be like this. And as you can see, at the beginning, the size of this was 0, but now the size of it is 3. Now, how can I access, for example, this hello? It's going to be A1. How I access this is A0, and this is A3. So I hope this makes a little sense for you, and it's a little bit easier to understand the concept of array. And as I said, I'm going to add a screen capture of my computer in programming so you can see how that looks in Python programming. Okay? So if you have any other questions, just let me know.